He stumbled through the storm-ravaged streets, paws bleeding, fur matted, shivering from exhaustion. Draped gently across his golden back was a small boy, unconscious, soaked from the relentless fury of the hurricane. No leash, no collar, just a single scrap of paper fluttering from his neck, a plea scrawled in faded ink. This weary golden retriever didn't brave the raging tempest seeking rescue for himself. He carried something far more precious, a child's life. The town of Cedar Grove, nestled at the edge of Oregon's vast pine forests, awoke to the shattered breath of a storm that had shaken its soul. The hurricane had rolled through like a freight train in the dead of night, leaving behind a wake of twisted metal, cracked roads, and trees stripped bare like skeletons clawing at the sky. Rain still fell lightly, whispering against broken window panes, and the air held a chilled stillness, as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what had survived. Inside a narrow two-story cottage at the end of Briarwood Lane, 10-year-old Charlie Evans stirred beneath a dusty quilt. Charlie was a wiry child with messy chestnut hair, pale skin freckled from sun and mischief, and bright hazel eyes that had once brimmed with questions. This morning, however, they opened slowly, clouded by confusion. His left cheek bore a faint bruise from the bookshelf that had tipped during the night. The house was too quiet, too cold. The last thing he remembered was his mother shouting over the roar of wind, pulling him into the closet before the roof groaned above them. And now, she was gone. The living room was unrecognizable. Water pooled near the front door where the frame had splintered. A tree limb had punched through the kitchen window, spraying glass across the counter like forgotten stardust. Charlie wandered barefoot, calling softly, "Mom?" No answer, just the distant creak of damaged timber and the occasional flutter of loose shingles outside. Laura Evans, his mother, was a resilient woman in her early 40s, tall and slim with wind-chapped skin, sharp blue eyes, and hair the color of red maple bark. A local librarian, she'd raised Charlie alone since his father's disappearance years earlier. Her voice, normally gentle but firm, had been the one constant in his life, guiding, protecting, and often urging him to be brave when he didn't want to be. And now, in this eerie silence, her absence felt like a hole torn straight through his chest. Charlie ventured outside, wrapping his raincoat over his shoulders. The neighborhood was wrecked, roofs peeled back like tin can lids, mailboxes uprooted, power lines dangled like twisted vines. A few neighbors stumbled around, some calling for pets, others carrying bags of belongings. But Charlie didn't stop for them. His heart thumped with urgency. He climbed over fallen branches, his shoes squishing in the mud, and returned to the place where he last saw her, the closet beneath the stairs. It was empty, but there, where the wall met the floor, something golden moved. A dog. A large golden retriever, soaked and shivering, stood at the threshold with soft, sad eyes. His fur was a deep honey gold, now muddied and plastered to his ribs, and one of his ears was slightly torn at the tip. Around his thick neck hung a piece of faded twine, and tied to it a crumpled scrap of damp paper. He didn't growl or bark, he just stared at Charlie, eyes filled with a strange intensity, as if recognizing the boy. Charlie took a step forward. "Hey, buddy, where did you come from?" The dog, whom we will soon know as Max, didn't move until Charlie knelt. Then, slowly, he padded forward and nudged his head into the boy's chest, panting softly. Charlie's fingers trembled as he untied the note. The paper was water-damaged, but the writing was still legible. "Charlie, don't trust anyone." The boy's stomach dropped. He looked back at Max, heart pounding. Who had written the message? His mother? If so, how did the dog get it, and where was she now? Charlie gripped the paper in one hand, Max's damp ruff in the other. His world had already split in two before the storm and after. But this was something else entirely, not just disaster. This was mystery. This was danger. He didn't know who to call. The phones were out. The neighborhood was in chaos. But one thing had crystallized in his young heart. He had to find his mom. And this dog, this quiet, watching, battle-worn creature, was the only one who might know the way. Max nudged Charlie toward the open street, and they began walking side by side, the boy and the golden retriever, surrounded by the debris of broken homes and shattered certainty. They passed the old fire station, now a shell of scorched brick and collapsed roof. Charlie glanced up to see a woman standing nearby, a neighbor. Mrs. Delaney, mid-60s, heavy-set, with wiry gray hair and a plastic rain bonnet that clung to her head. She had always been kind in a nosy sort of way, often baking peanut brittle for the neighborhood kids. But when she saw Charlie and Max, her expression changed. Not warm, not concerned, just unreadable. Charlie remembered the note. He tightened his grip on Max's fur and walked faster. By the time they reached the edge of town, the rain had stopped, but the clouds still pressed low. Max began tugging slightly toward the west, toward the old industrial district. Charlie hesitated. He'd never been that way before. His mom had told him it wasn't safe. Too many collapsed buildings, too many places to get lost. But Max pulled again, more urgently. Charlie took a deep breath. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's go." As they disappeared into the mist beyond Cedar Grove's edge, neither the boy nor the dog looked back. Not at the shattered street, not at the strangers watching, and certainly not at the note still clenched in Charlie's hand. The sky above Cedar Grove had shifted to a dull, brooding gray, thick with the scent of wet wood and overturned earth. Charlie Evans trudged behind Max, the golden retriever guiding him with unspoken purpose, his paws splashing softly through puddles along the cracked sidewalk. They were headed west into the outskirts of the industrial zone, a place Charlie had only seen from the distance, abandoned warehouses with rusted signs and ivy-choked fences, where birds no longer sang and windows stared back hollow-eyed. The message around Max's neck still weighed heavy in Charlie's pocket. "Charlie, don't trust anyone." But no name, no explanation, just that quiet warning. Max stopped suddenly at the chain-link gate leading to the old Sinclair textile mill, a skeletal complex of red brick and shattered glass. He sniffed at the ground and let out a low whine. Charlie knelt beside him, hand trembling as he ran his fingers over the dog's damp fur. "Is this where she went?" he whispered, though he didn't know how Max could answer. What had happened here? The boy stood and looked around. Most of the street was empty except for the occasional rustle of tarp or clang of wind catching loose tin. Just as he turned to suggest they move on, a voice cut through the stillness. "You shouldn't be here, kid." Charlie spun. Standing near the remains of a brick wall was a tall man in his late 50s, with a broad frame wrapped in a dark sheriff's windbreaker. He had short-cropped silver hair, a sharp jawline dusted in gray stubble, and storm-colored eyes that narrowed with cautious authority. A silver badge glinted on his chest, Sheriff William Brooks. William had the look of someone who had once been strong as iron and now lived with cracks he never spoke of. The years had made him slower, but not softer. His boots splashed as he stepped closer, and his deep voice lowered. "Your name, Charlie Evans?" Charlie hesitated. "Yes. How do you know?" "Your mother filed a missing persons alert on your father 5 years ago. Name stuck." William gave Max a sidelong glance. "And this mutt with you?" "He's helping me," Charlie answered quietly. He had this. He pulled the damp note from his pocket. William took it and squinted. His face changed, stiffening, darkening. "Where did you get this?" Max had it around his neck. "After the storm. I woke up and she was gone." William didn't respond at first. Then he looked up slowly. "You said your mother is missing?" Charlie nodded, his lip trembling. "I think she left me the note. I think someone took her." William stared at him for a long moment, then glanced around, checking rooftops and corners with the instinct of a man who'd done this too many times before. "Come on," he said. "Let's talk somewhere warmer." They drove in William's weathered patrol truck, Max curled in the back seat, ears perked. The radio crackled with storm damage updates, but Charlie wasn't listening. He was watching the sheriff. William's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. There was something in the man's silence, a war behind his eyes. They pulled up to the Cedar Grove Sheriff's Station, a squat 2-story building with storm-scarred siding and flickering lights. William led Charlie to his office, where faded family photos hung crooked on the walls and a worn flannel jacket was draped over a chair. On the desk sat a framed photo of a young girl with auburn braids and a shy smile. Charlie looked at it, and William noticed. "That's Claire," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "My daughter. She was 10. Like you." Charlie didn't ask, but William continued anyway. "During the big flood of 2016, she disappeared. We never found her, just her backpack on the riverbank." His voice broke slightly. "I couldn't save her." He sat heavily, gesturing for Charlie to do the same. Now tell me everything. From the start. Charlie recounted the storm, the empty house, Max's arrival. As he spoke, William listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Charlie finished, the sheriff reached for a file drawer and pulled out a manila folder, thick with reports. There's been something brewing in this town, son. I don't know what yet, but you're not the only one who's lost someone recently. 5 other people. Disappearances. All dismissed as storm-related, but now this, he tapped the note, changes everything. As they spoke, Max stood and padded to the sheriff's desk. He sniffed at a drawer and barked once low and deliberate. William frowned, opened the drawer, and found nothing unusual except a folded map. But something about Max's focus made him uneasy. Max wasn't just a stray. That night, William arranged for Charlie to sleep in a spare room at the station. Max lay curled by the bed, unmoving. William sat in his office long after sunset, staring at the note. The handwriting tugged at something familiar in the back of his mind. Eventually, he locked the note in his drawer and stood to turn off the light. But outside, in the shadows of the parking lot, someone was watching the sheriff's station. A figure in a black hood leaned against the far fence, unseen, waiting. A thick fog settled over Cedar Grove that morning, rolling in from the western hills like a tide of secrets. The sheriff's station stood quiet under the haze, its siding still bearing scars from the recent storm. Inside, the glow of a desk lamp cast a pale circle across Sheriff William Brooks's cluttered office. Charlie Evans sat cross-legged in a worn armchair, still wearing his oversized hoodie from the day before, sleeves damp at the cuffs. Max, the golden retriever, rested by his feet, head on paws, eyes always alert. William entered, holding 2 mugs. He handed one to Charlie. It was hot cocoa, slightly bitter but comforting. The sheriff sipped his own black coffee and sat across from the boy. "Did Max sleep at all last night?" he asked. Charlie shook his head. "Not really. He kept getting up, sniffing the door." William frowned. Smart dog. They sat in silence for a moment before William pulled the note back out of the drawer. He had stayed up late comparing handwriting samples from past reports, old warnings, anonymous letters, even missing person files. Nothing matched, but the phrasing tugged at something. Something familiar, yet just out of reach. Before he could voice the thought, the phone rang. A landline, one of the few still functional. William picked up, his brows knitting tighter as he listened. After a few clipped responses, he hung up and grabbed his keys. "That was Bethany. She runs the diner downtown. Says 2 men in black jackets were asking about you. Showed a photo of you and Max. She thought it felt off. No badges, no names." Charlie stiffened. "Do they know we're here?" "I don't think so, but we're not waiting to find out." They left through the back entrance. William's SUV sat parked in the alley, engine already warmed. He opened the rear door for Charlie and Max, then glanced around with the wary tension of a man who'd once been ambushed in a parking lot because he had. He hadn't worn his badge for 3 months after Claire went missing. What good had it done? As they drove toward a safe house on the edge of town, a place William kept for witnesses or victims too fragile for the system, Charlie watched the mist roll across the windshield. "Sheriff," he asked softly, "do you think they took her?" William glanced in the mirror. "I think whoever left that note didn't want you trusting the wrong people. That means someone's playing both sides." They reached the safe house, a small 2-bedroom cottage with boarded windows and overgrown hedges. William unlocked it with a key from his neck chain. "We'll lay low here," he said. "Just for today. I've got someone coming to help." Later that afternoon, that someone arrived. She stepped out of a gray sedan with a purposeful gait, her eyes sharp behind rectangle-shaped glasses. Deputy Elena Price, early 30s, mixed race with chestnut-brown skin and black curls tied in a tight bun, was as no-nonsense as they came. Her frame was lean, her movements precise. She'd served 2 tours as an Air Force investigator before joining William's department 3 years ago. Most folks found her intimidating, but William trusted her with his life. "Kid," she said, offering a curt nod to Charlie. Then she bent to scratch Max behind the ears. "You're a handsome one." "Anything?" William asked. "Something," she replied, pulling out her tablet. "Got street camera footage from an ATM down on Main. 2 men wearing black scarves over their faces were parked across from the diner. When Bethany walked away, they followed a delivery truck headed south wrong direction." William grunted. "So either they're idiots or this was bait." As dusk fell, Charlie stood at the window, peering between the blinds. That's when he saw them. Two shadows at the end of the street, standing still, watching the house. He stepped back quickly. "They're here," he whispered. William and Elena reacted fast. Lights off, guns drawn. Elena took the back, William the front. But the moment they opened the doors, the shadows vanished like smoke pulled away by wind. Max growled low in his throat. He darted from the living room and leapt through the partially opened side door, bounding into the yard. Charlie shouted, chasing after him, ignoring William's call to stay inside. In the foggy dark, two figures surged from the hedges. Faces wrapped in dark scarves, they moved fast, one reaching for Charlie, the other grabbing at Max's collar. Max snapped back fiercely, teeth bared, but the attacker yanked the string from his neck. The note was gone. "Max!" Charlie cried out, stumbling backward as the man lunged again, but Max shoved between them, barking viciously. A second later, a loud crack echoed across the yard. Elena fired into the air. "Drop it!" she shouted. The masked men scattered like startled deer, disappearing into the night fog. Back inside, Charlie knelt beside Max, clutching his fur. "They took it," he gasped. "The note!" William paced the room, furious. "That was our only lead," he muttered, "and they knew exactly what to take." Elena's eyes narrowed. "This isn't random, Bill. Someone wants that message erased." Charlie looked up slowly. "They weren't just trying to scare us. They were looking for something. And my mom, she's part of it. She knew this would happen." For the first time, William didn't try to comfort him, because he believed it too. The early morning fog over Cedar Grove thinned just enough to let a sliver of light cut through the branches lining the backwoods. The wind had stilled, and the silence felt uneasy, like the world was pausing before something was about to be revealed. The town, though still recovering from the storm, was slowly returning to routine. But Charlie Evans couldn't afford normal, not when his mother was still missing and masked men had tried to take him just the night before. He sat at the kitchen table of the safe house, fingers stained with dust and ink. In front of him lay his mother's old notebook, the one William had recovered from the sheriff's evidence box that morning. It had been sealed with a green ribbon Laura Evans's quiet signature for keeping her research separate from her work at the library. The cover was cracked and weathered, edges curled, the inside filled with neat, looping handwriting. Charlie had stared at it for hours, hoping it would speak louder than it did. Max sat at his side, calm but alert, his head resting just beside Charlie's knee. The golden retriever had grown more protective since the attack, refusing to leave Charlie's side even when he slept. Sheriff William Brooks stood at the stove, frying eggs. Though he rarely cooked for anyone else, he made a quiet exception now. His eyes were shadowed from lack of sleep, and his usual pressed uniform was replaced by a gray thermal shirt and weathered jeans. But his badge still hung around his neck. William was the type of man who needed structure, even in chaos. "I think I found something," Charlie said quietly, pointing to a folded map tucked into the back of the journal. It was a hand-drawn sketch marked with water lines and red ink circles. At the center, underlined 3 times, was a name, Pinecrest Lake. Just below it, in Laura's handwriting, "Warehouse transfer site. Do not approach alone." William leaned over his shoulder. "Pinecrest," he muttered. "That lake used to be part of an old mill route, freight boats back in the 50s. Most of it's dried up now. There's a substation nearby, but nobody uses it." Charlie flipped the next page. A list of times, coordinates, a single phrase scribbled in different ink. "They're not just moving goods. They're moving people." William stepped back, jaw tight. "Your mom was onto something." "Then the men with masks," Charlie whispered. "They think I know more than I do." "They think you're a threat," William corrected, "which means we're out of time." They left before noon, taking the long route through the logging trail to avoid town cameras. Deputy Elena Price stayed behind, posing as Charlie's guardian in case someone came snooping again. Elena had a steady hand and sharp instincts, and William trusted her with cover operations more than anyone else in the department. Max rode in the back seat again, ears twitching at every sound, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Charlie pressed the notebook to his chest. Pinecrest Lake was about 12 miles from Cedar Grove, buried deep in the state forest and shielded by slopes of pine and birch. When they arrived, the water looked more like a gray mirror stretched across an ancient wound. Broken docks jutted out like forgotten ribs, and the remnants of a collapsed boathouse leaned toward the water, as if trying to confess a long-held secret. They parked near the ranger's cabin long abandoned, its shutters swinging loose in the breeze. William handed Charlie a flashlight and a walkie-talkie. "Stay close. If I say run, you run." Max growled softly as they made their way down the old path, paws silent against the fallen pine needles. They reached the water's edge, where the remains of a concrete loading dock curved beneath a thicket of cattails. William pointed toward a rusted hatch half submerged in algae. "That leads to the old storage tunnel," he said. "They used to haul crates underground to keep them cool. Nobody's used it since the 80s. That's where we start." The hatch screeched open. The tunnel beyond was cold and damp, the air heavy with rot and rust. They moved slowly, William in front with his flashlight high, Charlie in the middle, Max bringing up the rear. About 40 feet in, Max froze. His hackles rose. He growled, not loud, but low and vibrating through the walls like a warning from the earth itself. William stopped, raising a hand. "Something's here," he muttered. Then the trapdoor snapped open. A hidden grate collapsed under Charlie's feet, and he dropped with a yelp into the dark below. Max lunged in after him without hesitation, the boy's cry still echoing through the tunnel. William shouted and dropped to his knees, but it was too late. The floor had swallowed them. Charlie hit the ground hard, his flashlight skittering away. Max landed beside him with a grunt, but quickly stood over him, growling in all directions. The room was small, concrete, and almost entirely dark except for the faint glow coming from a single hanging bulb. On the far wall, something fluttered. Paper. Taped. Charlie crawled toward it. It was a second note. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Go to Oak Ridge Chapel. I'm here. Trust no one but Max." His heart pounded. She was alive. William found them 10 minutes later, having pried open the side access panel and climbed down the maintenance stairs with a rope. He pulled Charlie and Max up one at a time, breath ragged, hands bleeding from rusted edges. They emerged into sunlight. Max immediately turned back toward the woods, body stiff. Charlie followed his gaze. A black SUV was parked across the lake, its engine off. Two figures stood beside it, watching. They didn't chase, they didn't move, but they saw, and that was enough. The road to Oak Ridge twisted through ancient trees, their bare branches arching like the ribs of some forgotten cathedral. A fine mist coated the ground, and the late afternoon light was already fading into a dim golden haze as Charlie Evans and Max approached the outskirts of the forest hamlet where the chapel stood. Oak Ridge had long been abandoned, more myth than map, whispered about by old-timers at gas stations and hunting lodges. No one came here unless they had reason. Charlie did. His fingers gripped the handlebars of William's mountain bike, borrowed for stealth. Max jogged beside him, tongue lolling, his stride slower than usual since the fall at Pinecrest. A shallow gash along his left flank had scabbed over but still stiffened his gait. Yet he refused to stay behind. He never would. The chapel emerged from the trees like something exhaled from another time. A crumbling stone structure with ivy choking its bell tower, stained glass windows cracked but intact. The roof had partially collapsed, and the once beautiful archway had sunken with time. At the base of the old oak tree beside the chapel lay a withered bouquet, too recent to have been left by nature. Charlie approached carefully. Max pressed tight against his knee. The old wooden door creaked open with a hollow sigh. Inside, dust filtered through the fractured light, dancing above broken pews. The silence was suffocating. Then a voice echoed, "Well, you finally made it." Charlie froze. From the shadows behind the altar emerged a tall, broad-shouldered man in a faded black overcoat. His features were sharp, jaw square beneath a peppered beard, and his steel-gray eyes showed no warmth. Rufus Kane, mid-50s, once a trusted family friend, now something else entirely. His voice carried a familiarity that made Charlie's skin crawl. Rufus had been Laura Evans' research partner a decade ago until their investigations into missing children and illegal transport routes led them to a powerful corporation based just outside Cedar Grove. Then Rufus vanished. Laura said he'd backed away when things got dangerous. That was only half the truth. "You look like her," Rufus said, stepping into the light. "Same eyes, same stubbornness." Charlie didn't speak. Max growled low and steady. Rufus raised a hand. "Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. I just need what your mother found. The evidence, the files. She hid them somewhere, and I'm guessing she told you where." "I don't know anything," Charlie said through gritted teeth. Rufus smiled. "Wrong answer." Two men stepped out from the shadows, masked, black scarves pulled up to their cheekbones. One held a baton, the other a taser. Max barked sharply and moved in front of Charlie, teeth bared. The men paused, but only for a second. Rufus spoke calmly. "Let me make this simple. Tell me where the evidence is, or the dog suffers." Charlie's breath hitched. "You wouldn't." "I already have," Rufus said. "Ask your mother what I did to her friend." The man with the baton lunged. Max sprang, intercepting midair, knocking him backward. But the second man was faster. The taser struck Max's side, and the dog yelped in agony, legs buckling. "No!" Charlie screamed. Max collapsed at his feet, his body twitching before going still. A low whimper escaped his throat. Charlie dropped beside him, hands shaking. Max's amber eyes fluttered open but dimmed quickly. Blood trickled from the wound reopened on his side. Rufus stepped closer, crouching. "Last chance, kid. You tell me where the files are or he dies right here, in front of you." Charlie was crying now, not out of fear but fury. "You used to help people," Rufus sneered. "I used to believe in people, until I realized truth doesn't change anything. Power does." Max coughed, one paw lifting to press against Charlie's wrist. Charlie looked down and saw something beneath Max's collar, a flash drive. His mother had hidden it on Max the entire time. Rufus hadn't seen it yet. Charlie stood up slowly. "Fine," he said, voice trembling. "But I want to help him first. I want a med kit. You give me that, and I'll give you what you want." Rufus smirked. "Good boy, you've got 10 minutes. He turned to his men. "Get the kit." As they moved away, Charlie knelt and slid the drive into his pocket. Max blinked once, barely conscious. "I've got you," Charlie whispered. "Just hold on." He scanned the chapel. His gaze landed on the side door, rotted and barely attached. He made his choice. "Now!" he hissed to Max. Charlie grabbed Max under his front legs and half-dragged, half-carried him to the door. Wood splintered under pressure. Behind them, Rufus shouted. They burst into the forest, adrenaline pushing Charlie through the brambles. Max was heavy, but he didn't let go. Shots rang out behind them, misses. Tree trunks splintered. Then came the sirens. William's voice boomed through the woods from a bullhorn. "Drop your weapons!" Deputy Elena Price stepped from the brush, rifle drawn, her voice sharp as wind. "On your knees, now!" A flurry of tactical boots followed. The cavalry had come. Charlie collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping. William appeared, grabbing Max, pressing a towel to his side. "Stay with us, boy, just hang on." Charlie clutched the flash drive, eyes wide. "He had it the whole time," he said. "She trusted him. Not me. Him." Rain fell in slow, deliberate drizzles, soaking the pine-covered hills surrounding the Oak Ridge Chapel. The last of the gunfire had ceased, replaced by the low hum of emergency radios and the occasional rustle of paramedics moving swiftly over the uneven ground. The once-forgotten stone church now stood as the centerpiece of a crime scene, bathed in the flashing red and blue glow of squad cars. A perimeter had been established, suspects detained. Rufus Kane, blood trickling from a head wound, sat cuffed beneath the oak tree, his eyes blank. His empire of lies finally collapsed around him. Charlie Evans knelt beside Max beneath a tarp hastily stretched between two trees. The dog's breathing was shallow, each exhale a soft, pained wheeze. His golden fur was damp and streaked with dirt and dried blood. Paramedic Sophie McLean, a short, broad-shouldered woman in her late 30s with curly auburn hair and dark circles beneath her eyes, worked gently but quickly, wrapping gauze around Max's flank. "He's lost blood," she murmured. "But he's strong. You keep talking to him, all right?" Charlie whispered quietly, his hand resting over Max's paw. "You can't leave me, buddy. Not now." "We're so close." Behind them, Sheriff William Brooks limped up the hill, his left arm pressed to a bloodied bandage just beneath his ribs. His tan shirt was soaked, streaked with red, but he refused the stretcher. His face, hardened from years of silence and self-blame, now softened with fierce resolve. William had stepped between Charlie and Rufus during the escape, just as Rufus raised a pistol in desperation. The bullet had grazed William's ribs. It could have been worse. But for William, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about atonement. "I'm not done yet," he muttered to Deputy Elena Price, who now paced near the chapel's side entrance, her rifle still cradled in her arms. Elena nodded silently, her sharp eyes scanning the edge of the woods. She had been the one to flank Rufus's men during the ambush, helping to turn the tide. She was never one for many words, but her loyalty was never in doubt. Charlie stood shakily. The note said she was here, somewhere below. William motioned toward the chapel. There's a stairwell beneath the bell tower. We didn't clear that section yet. Charlie didn't wait for permission. He ran toward the side door, Max too weak to follow this time. The stone steps beneath the bell tower creaked underfoot. He found a rusted gate halfway down, wedged shut. William joined him a moment later, panting, and forced it open with a grunt. Behind it was a narrow tunnel lined with old stone and the faint scent of damp earth. And a sound, a faint knock, then another. Charlie ran ahead. They found her in a small room with concrete walls lit by a flickering lantern and a single beam of daylight cutting through a crack in the ceiling. Laura Evans, thin and bruised, her red hair tangled, was bound at the wrist with a strip of curtain and slumped against the wall. But her eyes, those sharp blue eyes, lit up the instant they landed on her son. "Charlie?" she gasped, hoarse. Charlie dropped to his knees, tears spilling as he fumbled to untie her. "I found you, Mom. I found you." Laura wrapped her arms around him as soon as she could, pulling him close, sobbing into his shoulder. "You're safe. Oh God, you're safe." William stood back, silently watching the reunion, his own hand pressed tight against his side. "I thought," Laura began, then caught herself. "How did you—" "Max," Charlie said. "He brought me to everything, every clue. He protected me." Laura blinked and then, slowly, reached into the inside pocket of her tattered coat. Her hand emerged with a small, folded slip of paper. It was creased, worn, and slightly damp. She handed it to Charlie. "I wrote this weeks ago," she said. "I didn't think it'd ever reach you." Charlie unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was rushed but unmistakable. "Always trust Max. He's your only protector now." His breath caught in his throat. Max hadn't just been any dog. He had been trained by Laura herself. Years ago, during her investigation into missing persons and illicit transportation networks, Laura had worked undercover with a private canine training program. Max was her assigned dog, then only a year old, with endless energy and piercing eyes. She had spent months training him, forming a bond deeper than she ever thought possible. But when things turned dark, when she knew too much, she made the hardest decision of her life: hide Max, and if anything happened, trust he'd find her son. "I had to disappear," she said, voice trembling. "I left clues, hoping you'd be smart enough, brave enough." Charlie clutched the paper and nodded. "He never left me, not once." When they returned to the surface, medics were preparing to airlift Max to a veterinary hospital in Greenville. Charlie refused to leave his side. William, sitting on the bumper of a squad car, watched the boy stroke the dog's head while Laura stood nearby, her arm around her son's shoulders. Cedar Grove, battered by storm and scandal, had started to rebuild. The files recovered from the flash drive Max had carried exposed an underground trafficking operation spanning multiple counties. Rufus and his accomplices faced federal charges. News crews flooded the town within days, but Charlie didn't speak to them. The story wasn't theirs to tell. In the weeks that followed, Max recovered slowly. His wounds healed, his strength returned, and one spring morning, he bounded down the front steps of the Evans house, tail wagging, eyes full of light. William came by often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit on the porch with Laura. The shadows under his eyes had lessened. The photo of Claire still sat on his desk, but now beside it was a new one: Charlie and Max, standing under the oak tree outside Oak Ridge, the chapel behind them. Charlie kept the third note in a small wooden box under his bed. He read it often, not because he needed the reminder, but because it felt like a promise fulfilled. Max had never just been a dog. He had been a guardian, a message, and a home. Sometimes, the strongest protectors come in the quietest forms: a loyal dog, a brave child, a parent who never gives up. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a message, a shield, and a reminder that love, real, selfless love, never stops searching, never stops protecting. In our everyday lives, we may not face masked enemies or hidden tunnels, but we all carry battles no one else sees. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's loss, maybe it's simply the ache of not knowing what tomorrow brings. But just like Charlie, we are stronger when we trust, when we hope, and when we believe we are not alone. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need it today. Leave a comment below and tell us, have you ever had a Max in your life, a guardian you never expected? And if you believe that love, loyalty, and quiet courage can still change the world, type amen in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never